This show may contain explicit language and/or spoilers. Where we're going, we don't need roads. Carpe diem, seize the day, boys. Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. Good morning, Vietnam! I'm as mad as hell and I'm not going to take this anymore! They call it a Royale with cheese. I've always depended on the kindness of strangers. You've got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk? Shaken, not stirred. They call me Mr. Tibbs. I'll have what she's having. Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room. I am serious, and don't call me Shirley. You make me want to be a better man. I'm not bad. I'm just drawn that way. Go ahead. Make my day. You can't handle the truth. I'm walking here. I'm walking here. May the force be with you. To infinity and beyond. They're here. Are you talking to me? Are you talking to me? Yes, we are, because this is the greatest movie of all time podcast. The only way to beat my crazy was by doing something even crazier. Thank you. I love you. I knew it from the moment I saw you. I'm sorry it took me so long to catch up. This is the Silver Linings Playbook episode, number 11 of the greatest movie of all time podcast. I'm Tom Duncan.
And I'm Dana Duncan. And you were just quoting the movie and not saying that to me.
That's correct. I actually have something for that later on. So tonight we're bringing you Silver Linings Playbook from 2012, the movie by David O. Russell, and starring Bradley Cooper, Jennifer Lawrence, and Robert De Niro. So for all of you that listened to last week's episode, we did say you could catch this on Netflix. Hopefully that you did before you listened to this episode. If you haven't, I would suggest going and doing so now before we talk about it. But just for the basic synopsis that we do every week, after losing his job and wife and spending time in a mental institution, Pat Solatano, played by Bradley Cooper, winds up living with his parents, Robert De Niro and Jacki Weaver. He wants to rebuild his life and reunite with his wife, but his parents would be happy if he just shared their obsession with the Philadelphia Eagles. Things get complicated when Pat meets Tiffany, played by Jennifer Lawrence, who offers to help him reconnect with his wife if he will do something very important for her in exchange. So, we'll just quickly kind of go over the movie. I do remember watching this when it came out. This has been part of my ongoing Oscar project for well over a decade at this point, to watch every Best Picture nominee. It translated from watching every Best Picture nominee each year in after the fact almost, because you couldn't always get to some of these, to trying to get every one of them in before the awards now. And this was one of those that I had watched back. I do remember watching it in college. And I think the world of this film. I don't think you watched it back when it originally came out. I think you watched it a couple of years after. Is that right?
Correct.
So I know just in talking from you in the past couple of days that you've had a more difficult time with this movie than I have. This has always been a fun, actually, rewatch for me because I like more of the kind of rebuilding romantic aspects of this, but it deals with a very difficult and complicated situation, mental illness, and specifically Bradley Cooper's dealing with, at least in the actions before this movie, undiagnosed and untreated bipolar disorder, which he slowly helps rebuild his life after receiving the diagnosis and kind of going through treatment. So we're just going to kind of go through the movie here. Or if you haven't seen this before, again, my suggestion to go and watch it now if you can. We try and make these ones that people can easily find or make available. So it kind of opens up. We're in a mental hospital. We get a very quick introduction to Pat. He's going through the normal mental hospital type things, getting his pills, which of course he does the defiant thing and spits out. His mother comes to collect him, and his friend Danny, played by one of your favorite actors, Chris Tucker, tries to stow away in order to escape the mental ward. We quickly get introduced to his father, Pat Sr., played by Robert De Niro, who is now focusing on being a bookie because this movie apparently takes place in 2008 during the recession after he's lost his job. And so half of the movie kind of focuses on this sports angle, which kind of ties in, but at least at first doesn't make a whole lot of sense as to how it's going to deal with the concluding action of this. And we're just kind of quickly flown through the first couple of scenes. So anything that stuck out to you about anything that we've brought up so far?
No, it's just to watch a situation with mental illness and go through the whole or a situation of a marriage breakup and that whole thing just was, I found difficult to watch.
Well, and we haven't quite gotten to the part of that. They don't really reveal for a few scenes and really what exactly happened or what's exactly going on. They kind of keep you in the dark that he's been there by court order due to something obviously that happened. You would assume that it has some physical violent aspect to it, but as they refer to it later, the incident isn't revealed till a couple of scenes on.
Correct. But I mean, you can tell that it's the tone, it's not just the tone, it's the way that the movie is shot. There's almost a dark tone to it as it starts. It's not in shadows, but it's pretty close.
Well, I guess I've never really gotten that because I feel this entire movie is kind of building towards something, and it really doesn't have a ebb and flow or a peak and a valley type of thing. It just is kind of him rebuilding his life the entire time and trying to have this positive outlook to put his life back together after he's been in the mental hospital. So obviously this leads to him reading part of the syllabus for a woman referred to as Nikki at this point. We have not yet found out that, but spoiler, she is his wife or soon-to-be ex-wife. And he's reading A Farewell to Arms as part of the syllabus. Of course, this is really only to highlight that there is darkness in just about every corner of all of these books that she is assigning. And that if you have not read Farewell to Arms, I won't necessarily spoil it to you, but it has kind of a sour ending, per se.
It's a year-old book.
I suppose he does reveal the ending.
I mean, what's the purpose
in the movie?
I mean, how should we also avoid doing spoiler alerts that Othello dies, or Hamlet commits suicide? I mean, how far back?
Actually, it would be more Othello kills Desdemona, but okay, enough said. All right, so but he tosses the book out the window, wakes up his parents, and is in this crisis of conscience because not everything is happening with a happy ending. We kind of jump off from that point where he's kind of explaining the notion or the tone set forth for the movie that's found in the title itself, that he's looking for his own silver lining, his own positive spin on all of these bad things that are happening to him. Leads to his first therapy session where it's finally revealed that he came home after a bad day to find his wife in the shower with the history teacher, and then beats the shit out of the history teacher.
Comes close to killing him.
Yeah.
So they don't really say, but the reason he's committed was it was a plea bargain, which is, for those of you who are unaware, if you commit a crime, you can be found guilty, or not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect. This is a situation where the state agreed that he was crazy, so they let him not get convicted in exchange for a mental commitment, which is why he was in the hospital.
So all of this gets into eventually we have an officer drop by the house because there's a loud confrontation he has again with his parents, and due to the restraining order and everything else that's going on, we kind of get the background of all of this kind of ramping up to the all-important where the movie kind of suddenly changes, where he has dinner with his friend Ronnie and his wife Veronica, and they ask Veronica's sister Tiffany to come by for dinner because she is recently widowed.
Yes.
All culminating in the all-important her preemptively getting up and cutting dinner short, telling Pat that he needed to walk her home. So at the end of it, quote, "You can fuck me so long as the lights are turned out."
Yes.
So this brings apart one of my nominees for you said you were going to have a hard time with funniest lines. This is one of my honorable mentions, but Ronnie basically telling him not to ask about how Tiffany became a widow, and she walks into the room. "Pat, you look nice." "Tiffany, thank you." "Oh, I'm not flirting with you." "Oh, I didn't think you were." "I just see that you made an effort. I'm going to be better with my wife. I'm working on that. I want to acknowledge her beauty. I've never used to do that. I do now. Just practicing." How did Tommy die?"
Yeah.
And the fact that he's just so abruptly inappropriate and changes topics, and the way he plays this as kind of like manic, that he's just
exactly what it is. It's manic.
So it kind of gives you this first, and frankly, that's the thing that makes this movie work as well as it does for me, is kind of their sparring between each other. All of the best parts of this movie to me are the conversations and the dialogue between the two. And if that relationship was not centered or was poor, I don't think any of the rest of this movie would have worked.
Well, true. I mean, you're experiencing two people who are both bipolar, who are both going through a manic phase. And for those of us, such as me, who has a law practice that deals with mental illness on a large scale, you watch and see this and you understand exactly what's going on and what the situation is that they're going through. They're just not able to control their emotions, their thoughts, and they literally have no filters. And, this is always the way this works. And for those of us who are not going through that situation, we just look at the behavior as being batshit crazy.
So this obviously leads to, and I guess they don't really explain what or why. Maybe it's better played out in the book, because this is based on a book originally, but why she initially tries to start things with Pat and kind of gets in his head, but she interrupts his morning run in his trash bag that he uses to be able to sweat and cut weight. But trying to get under his skin a bit, and all of this sparse back and forth. up until the point where his therapist finally suggests that he should be friends with Tiffany in order to give the impression that he's improving to his wife. Most of Pat's motivation throughout the course of this film is inevitably, as it was described in the plot summary, that he wants to get back where he has this illusion of what his life used to be, which isn't really borne out. And but ultimately, he's driven toward putting his life back together exactly the way it was beforehand, even though he lets it out in little pieces here and there. It wasn't as great as he remembers it to be.
Well, it's part of the manic phase. People who are going through a manic phase have manifestations that come out in different ways. I've seen people in manic phase who are kleptomaniacs. I have seen people who are in manic phases who obsess on certain things. In this particular case, Pat's obsessing over his getting in shape, his training, his reading the syllabus of Nikki, his wife, from her English teacher, school. For Tiffany, the obsession is promiscuous sex, which is a common problem. Also, gambling can also be is a very common manic phase, which I found interesting since Robert De Niro, being Pat Sr., is a bookie, which only leads me to believe that the bipolar is family-oriented.
That's explicitly mentioned in the film. That Pat comes out and says, and I have to look at my notes here at something, but basically my dad's the guy who has the issues, not me. And that it's pretty explicitly laid out that's the whole thing, which, we kind of skipped over it a little bit, but after that first night where he meets Tiffany, comes home and he's trying to find his wedding video, only to lead to him accidentally hitting his mom, and then De Niro beating the shit out of him. Just because, and that's the real scene where it's kind of lit up that De Niro's got all of these other problems that are hereditary, and it comes out later, his level of guilt. He understands that he has these problems, and he's been living with it forever, but it's not in the same way you would for other things. So, all right. So eventually Pat invites Tiffany to dinner. I can get a letter to Nikki. They have an episode. Now, this is my actual nominee for funniest line in this particular instance. I ordered Raisin Bran because I don't want it to look like a date. It could still be a date if you order Raisin Bran.
Okay.
Well, I mean, the whole thing is just so ridiculous that if you don't want it to look like a date, or you don't want all of these other things, he's going so out of his way to try and make this. It's the one question I really don't understand about this movie is why she seemingly starts to come after him in some way and devises all of these plans, which you're slowly revealed through the course of the movie, and then finally at the end that she and the mother are in kind of cahoots together in order to spend time with him. And I don't know what it is about mothers and trying to set their sons up and so that they can, I don't know, have some type of romantic relationship with certain women, but it's certainly not an outplayed line of inquiry.
Yes, I'm well aware.
So, now this obviously leads to the end of it where they have a fight. Pat tries to go after Tiffany. She starts to scream bloody murder, essentially, that he's trying to harass her. And the song that was playing earlier in the doctor's office starts to play. He has a reoccurrence of his triggered episodes. The Stevie Wonder song, My Cherie Amour. And all of a sudden she realizes the severity of his issues. And it's, again, one of these scenes where you just kind of see the severity kind of come out slowly of what he's really dealing with.
Well, I think it's a situation of clearly she saw more in him than he saw in himself.
So,
and then she realized, I think she didn't quite understand the demons that he was living with. And then that scene does kind of let those demons out, makes it clear what's going on with him.
Well, naturally, that only leads to the issue where he's trying to give her an envelope to give to his ex-wife and meets one of her, let's say, boyfriends at the door, only to shoo him away as her parents are trying to do to him. She sees this whole escapade take place, and instead of just simply delivering the envelope as she had promised, she now asks him for an exchange where he does her a favor. She does not name it at the time, but that it does develop one of the crux conversations of the movie. Essentially that he wants to get back together with his wife, and she wants him to be closer to her, even though it's not explicitly stated.
Yes. I think that's exactly the case, and this is to some extent a contrived thing on her part to try to force time, because time really is, and shared experience is, the basis upon which love is established.
Well, I frankly believe that about every relationship, that it's shared experience, whether that's friendship or family or anything else, that you have a certain level of bond in any type of relationship due to that. There is a certain level of proximity, and that's why I've always, not to go down a weird road here, but long distance relationships can't carry on that same way, that it's a certain level of vicariousness that you can't really appreciate. So, but this does also give us kind of a reveal into Pat's delusions. Just highlighted, I'll pull out, and some of this is not direct quotes, it's kind of over the course of it, but we're in love. We'd want to change each other, but that's normal. Couples fight, we'd fight, and we wouldn't talk for a couple of weeks, but that's normal. I'm my best self, and she's her best self, and our love is going to be amazing.
Yeah.
And, okay, it's normal not to talk for a couple of weeks. Yeah. In what situation does any relationship work where you're just not talking to each other for a couple of weeks? I mean, we kind of skipped over the fact that it's revealed early on in his first therapy session, but that he called in like a conspiracy theory about his wife and the history teacher a week before he actually beat the history teacher almost to death. So, he's clearly got some breaks with some levels of reality, which I don't think they show.
He was also understanding that there was something going on between the two of them.
But I think there is some level where they probably could have gone harder or driven harder into the manic phases of this, but I don't think it would be as charming a film, at least to me, if they had really delved more into the mental health side of things. I mean, they do enough just to show the severity, but they don't make it so that it's the only thing that the audience focuses on. So we are introduced to some of the football watching then. Danny comes out of the hospital. He's being given the special remotes by Pat Sr. Because the Eagles are winning. And that will obviously come back around. But
I can just say sad, really sad, how they try to be Packer fan wannabes. The rabidness.
what do you mean by that?
They're just, the level of rabidness.
Okay.
Not there. Just not there.
No, I'll disagree wholeheartedly. Philadelphia fans are rabid. They have actually nothing to root for, and they're just terrible fans.
Well, what they do is instead of, being real passionate about their team, they just convert it to violence and figure that that's passion.
Yeah. So this is
Sorry,
where we
Philly fans, if you're out there listening, but you threw snowballs at Santa Claus.
I'm sorry. I personally don't care much for Philadelphia or Philadelphia fans. Oh well. You can take it out on me on Twitter
that across the river from New Jersey.
Wow, that's fair. So, anyway, this leads into Pat's first dance class, and we finally find out how Tommy died, and it's in kind of a really weird situation where they're in kind of an unusual state, particularly, and we kind of see how her obsession with promiscuity kind of comes about, that they were having troubles being intimate together, and he tries to go buy her some lingerie to get some things going, and stops to help somebody with their car, ultimately to be hit by somebody, by another car and killed, with the gift still in the front seat. She uses, in her grief, kind of to relate or obsesses on the thing that ultimately led to why he died in the first place. So I think this is probably one of the more destructive instances of the movie, where we can kind of get more into her psyche as well. Because the further we explore into Pat, the further we explore into her in order to get this or understand the relationship between the two.
Yeah, I can understand that, I guess. She referred to it as emotion, trying to show emotion. And I guess I had a hard time relating how it could be just an emotion.
What do you mean by that?
Well, she just kind of made it clinical. I mean, your husband dies because he's put himself in a situation because of something you did. That's not just emotion. That's guilt. But yet, there's not a sense of guilt that you derive from that scene.
Yeah. I suppose. But you understand where she's come from, at least a little bit into that piece. And this is really when the second half of the movie kind of kicks off. Some movies, unfortunately, they have a great premise and a great first hour, and then they kind of die over the second half because they don't have that finishing kick. And really what this does is set up this second half where they do this bargain, and he's spending time with her, and they're going to do this dance competition, and he starts to focus or obsess about something completely different. He's no longer reading the books. He's not worried about all of his fitness and running. He's doing all of the dance practice in order for them to work on their routine.
Well, I'm going to go different. There's not there's not two parts to this film. There's three.
Okay.
So the first part is the arc. Him slugging up the hill, trying to get to a point of stability where he's getting his life organized. Okay. Then there's a part where he's at the top of the hill and he's just level, which is her dancing with, or him dancing with her, him spending this time, him focused on something more positive and productive than Nikki. Then the third part of the film is the scene where they make the bet, and the revelation that he has in the front yard that Nikki never wrote the response letter, that it was Tiffany who did. And at that point, his demeanor, his attitude, his emotions, his mental status completely changed. So, and that's him coming down from the hill. He's now reached the valley or the point of his healing.
Well, and you're jumping a little bit ahead of where part of this is at, but this is kind of at the point in the movie, at least, where De Niro kind of expresses his guilt toward Pat right before he makes the big bet on the Giants game. You know, I didn't spend enough time with you earlier, but it's about now. I want to do everything I can to help you back on your feet. And, you know, all of these good things that are going on with you and all of the positive energy that is being put into this, he thinks it's all about trying to capitalize on a certain bet that he can do with the Giants game, ultimately to be undone by kind of an odd set of like racism that just kind of implanted into the middle of this movie. I mean, it's not unusual given how, you know, how football fans are and guys with too much beer, but still.
Well, I thought it was interesting because that's the other thing. As much as he resented mental health treatment, medication, and everything, what ends up happening is he gets into trouble by going to the rescue of not only his brother, but his therapist.
Yeah, I mean, it's an ironic twist of fate that, you know, all of this kind of culminates in that. But instead of like the whole thing unraveling, it kind of leads to the whole final kickoff of the movie where, you know, frankly, it's probably the reason Jennifer Lawrence won Best Actress for this movie is she comes in and is pissed that Pat misses practice, but it's because he's, you know, kind of in trouble with all of the police for getting in the middle of the fight. And she basically explains the whole structure that all of his superstitions are mixed, that, you know, it finally leading to the whole Excelsior moment. But ultimately, Pat spending more time with her is the positive influence that he's needed in his life. And ever since that's happened, things have actually gotten better for him, which is kind of like, you know, a certain level of symbolism, but is a little bit more overt.
Yeah. But I mean, that happens. A positive relationship can make the world of difference in all aspects of your life.
Well, and I don't want to necessarily limit that to romantic relationships either, but you know, I would tend to agree. So that leads to kind of the final reveal where, you know, after she's given him a copy of Nikki's letter already to this point, and he reads it, and kind of they highlight the one, you know, reading the signs line, which comes back around. Pat realizes Tiffany's wrote the letter for him, that she never actually gave his letter to Nikki. And she's actually been setting things up behind the scenes anyway. So that we get the final bet. Now, I'll be honest, I was not up on any part of gambling or sports gambling at this point when I originally watched the movie. So this is where I learned the term parlay. Obviously, sports gambling is felt a little bit differently than it was 8 years ago. But
please, your grandfather took you to the dog track and did parlays and had you
I didn't know what it meant.
He had you pick, and he won a parlay. He won like $1,900 back in like 1996 or 97.
Okay, and that may be, but I had no idea what it was. When he took me, I was like 7.
Yeah.
I just pointed to whichever one. Like, I had no frickin' clue. But, 8 years ago, sports gambling was kind of like a taboo subject. Now we have ESPN running whole shows on it.
Yeah. Well, we have an entire channel on Sirius XM with Brent Musburger.
So, but it sets up the parlay bet. Not only do the Eagles have to beat the Cowboys to end the season in order to make the playoffs that year, but ultimately Pat and Tiffany have to do at least, moderately well at the dance competition, and Pat Sr. will win all of his money back.
Well, not just all of his money back. He'll win twice his money back. That's what the parlay means. He gets his money back plus what he bet. So he doubled his money. It would have been 4 times the loss. So if you have $1,000, it's double or nothing. You've lost it. It's now $2,000. And then the parlay, I mean, he did well. Let's just put it that way.
But they contrive a lie to tell Pat that Nikki's going to come to the dance competition, and then she actually shows up, unbeknownst to Tiffany and anybody else. She freaks out, starts having drinks at the bar, but ultimately Pat takes her onto the dance floor. The Eagles beat the Cowboys, and it's just up to the dance in order to win the second part of the parlay. Now, the tension between the two during this whole thing, I mean, the noticeable both emotional and sexual tension, I thought actually really worked in this particular scene. Ultimately, of course, they scored just well enough in order to win the parlay, and everybody goes nuts. But the whole thing ends in that emotional sequence where I already shared that at the beginning or at the top of the show. Pat tells her that he loves her, and now they have gotten together, and everybody's good. So now
2 points I would like to make about this film. Number 1, Pat's got to be either a moron or completely deranged at one point, because whoever writes a letter, especially to a spouse, and just types their name at the bottom, because they show the letter that Nikki wrote, and it says at the bottom, "Love, Nikki." Nobody does that. You sign your name. You at least put your personal notation on it. Love, and you sign your first name. It's not on there. First
so
giveaway.
You're saying it should have been a dead giveaway. Okay.
Should have been a dead giveaway. Second, all of a sudden, we go from him having the revelation that she wrote the letter to him becoming like uber focused and completely healthy and mentally sound. He doesn't do anything bizarre. He doesn't do anything. It's like the entire healing of his mental health takes place in the span of the last 20 minutes of the film.
Well, I don't think that that's true. I don't think he heals and that it's just miraculous, but he finally figures it out or what's been going on, and he realizes his own feelings for it. I mean, that more than anything. I mean, you can tell right away. He wouldn't compliment her or start flirting with her and then immediately back away if he didn't have some type of strong feeling for her initially. There is a certain chemistry and connection when you just meet somebody that comes off, and he continuously has done this. This has been a whole elation up to that point. It's not that it just suddenly clicks and that he's like better. It's that they don't focus on the mental health aspect, and he's kind of figured out, this is the positive part of what my life should be.
Yeah, you obviously know that he's attracted to her because there's the scene where she takes off her halter top with her back with her back to him, and he just stands there and kind of, you know.
Thank you for bringing Bugs Bunny to Silver Linings Playbook, but all right.
But yeah.
All right. So, what is this movie actually about? I am removing the 15 words or 10 words limitation. Just what is this movie about?
I don't know. That's the problem I've had. I've been debating this. Is it mental health? Is it being or focusing on the positives in your life? Is it or dealing with positive relationships? I guess to some extent is trying to find what's good about no matter what life deals you.
All right, so I'll give mine then. But so just to set this part of it up, you've been trying to quote Tony Robbins back to me and all these other people. So outcome plus reaction, or excuse me, event plus out or reaction equals outcome. Okay. Yeah. So essentially what this is to me, the worst parts of ourselves or our lives don't by themselves define us. It is our reactions to those that give us our possible silver linings. Two people through their brokenness find solace in each other.
Okay.
They choose to move on and do it by getting help from the other person, that they're influenced by finding a relationship, but they only find it through their brokenness, and that they can relate to the other through it.
Okay. I'll agree.
That doesn't make for very interesting podcasting.
Well, again, this is one where, depending on what color the lens is on your glasses, is what you see.
Okay.
I think you could easily say this is a story of mental health. You can easily say this is a story of relationships. You can see this as being a story about finding the right person in your life. You can see this as being focusing on the positive instead of worrying about the negatives. You can see this as being a situation where people are trying, or where your life should be based on what, going with the flow instead of trying to control it.
So, again, I don't know if I've revealed this to the audience before, but one of the things that I always come back to, why do you like certain movies? Why do you not? And it's always been my problem with kind of the anti-hero type of trope is I love characters that have a certain level of catharsis or that find a way to grow through the course of the movie. And the whole movie is about both of them putting their lives back together, that they went through these highly traumatic situations and that they learned to grow and are in better places by the end of it. I mean, it doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. You describe and you go through all of the pain and the problems that they individually went to kind of set up who they were. But ultimately, the whole point of the thing is that they not necessarily fix, but like become each other's silver lining.
Okay.
That they wouldn't have been together or been part of that had it not been all of the things they had to go through in order to get to that point.
But that's what everything is. That's who you are at any moment in time is a combination of what you put into the wastebasket and what other people throw in there as well. And that's who you are. And you have to define whether you think it's the same. It's the rummage sale principle. What's your trash is somebody else's treasure, and how you perceive it. So, I don't know. Why don't we get to the questions or the scoring process here and deal with this?
You're kind of jumping ways ahead.
Well, okay.
So, best performance?
I think Jennifer Lawrence was the most had the biggest impression on me, if not her, the mother.
Okay. Well, I think it's notable to say Jennifer Lawrence. I mean, she did win Best Actress for this movie, notably. I don't want to understate how well I think Cooper played kind of all of the manic parts of this without going over, and that he's kind of he becomes obsessive, or he goes over all of his little mannerisms, and the rest of that I thought were significant to this. But ultimately, I think she becomes kind of the heart of the movie. And most of the action, particularly in the second half of the movie, is made by her performance.
Okay.
So, best minor performance?
Again, I'd say the mother.
Okay.
She seems to be the glue that holds the family together.
So, Jacki Weaver.
Jacki Weaver. I've never seen her in anything else, to be honest.
I don't think I have either, but for me, it was David O. Russell's screenplay. I loved kind of the way it was scripted and a lot of the dialogue that was presented, and just kind of how it worked, and how they edited it a lot together worked for me more than anything else. And I've always been drawn to good writing, particularly through good dialogue, which is kind of ironic because that's probably the thing as just kind of a novice writer I always stink at the most. But most charismatic award.
Well, I would give that to Cooper.
I would too, but I do want to give a special mention to Chris Tucker.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, okay. He did do a nice job in this.
Again, he's not like a huge part of the film, but he's notable in almost every scene he's in. Like, you would forget if it wasn't him, anybody else in the movie, but he becomes like the centerpiece of almost every scene that he's a part of. And it's just like kind of how he plays himself.
See, I have this, I can understand that, and I guess he does. But the reason I picked Cooper is I'm starting to think about it, because you think about how good A Star is Born was, and how deadpan Cooper was in it. I mean, people just kind of put him off as to what he did and accomplished with it, whether it was acting. I have a feeling Bradley Cooper might be this generation's version of, say, Cary Grant or I guess, because Cary Grant never won an Academy Award because he just looked so good. People just never really thought about his acting. And I think to some extent
he's not Cary Grant.
Well, or you could even say John Wayne, which is...
No, it's not the right comp. So Cooper has been nominated a crap ton of times already, and he's starting to direct. Okay? You want to know who the real comp is? It's Redford.
Okay.
Like, they're both extraordinarily good looking, but they didn't get, their big starts until they were in their mid or early to mid 30s. And they started doing some directorial work that kind of took them to another level. You could maybe say Eastwood, where he's played some stuff, but I think Eastwood's not nearly as charismatic as Redford or Cooper is. And that they're just extremely likable, but they're kind of screw-ups. And then again, there are parts that separate Cooper that I could say that aren't part of anything I've seen from Redford.
Yeah.
But I think that Redford's a much better comp.
I can see that. Now that you actually say it, I could. I just couldn't quite get where I was trying to go with this, because there's just certain actors that people say, yeah, well, okay, he did a good job, but not that people want to go, oh, that was so outstanding. And I think in part is he is just so damn good looking. It's criminal that somebody should look that good.
Yeah, I mean, I can buy that, but then again, you and I have said that about a lot of different people. and our jealousy is clearly, or at least envy is clearly showing. So, all right, best scene.
I love the whole scene with the bet and the parlay starting, because I think that's really the climax of the film.
So to me, that was my nominee for what's our next thing is favorite scene. So Excelsior is the state motto of New York.
Yeah.
I do like the initial meeting in the dinner scene, but for me, the best one, and it's because of everything that was going on earlier on in the movie, but it's him searching for his wedding video because he's just met Tiffany. He clearly has this underlying desire to be with her, but he's conflicted. She offers to let him have sex with her, and he says no because he's got this obsession with trying to get back together with his wife. So he starts searching for the wedding video, and he's in such a state that he accidentally hits his mom. And then we see all of De Niro's projections, him obsessively beating on Pat. And all of the things that go into that scene between all three of them, where you're getting a performance by the mom, you're getting a good performance by De Niro, and you're getting his a good performance by Cooper. I just thought it was probably the best acted scene of the whole thing. It may not be the most consequential, but it's the one that probably dealt the most with mental health and kind of how all of these three people were in all of these relationships.
Okay. So fine. I'll stick by mine just because it was a climactic moment in the film.
I wasn't asking you to move off of yours.
Okay.
All right. So anyway.
Favorite scene? My favorite scene was the scene leading up to the dance, which is he's walking around and he sees Nikki across the dance floor, and he doesn't overreact. He keeps really calm and cool, and he searches out and gets Tiffany in, finds her, gets her out of the bar where she's drinking vodka and starting to get flirty with another guy. And I find that scene to be, that shows or is the exemplification of how he is, where he has reached the point, or the point that he has reached.
All right, I can buy it. I mean, I do enjoy that scene, but it's just kind of, for me, it was always a little bit more of a transitional piece. So, but, I can appreciate that. So, best line.
I don't know. I guess I do like the whole thing about where she's going through the whole litany of how she's the best thing that happened to him for the Eagles, and then the state motto of New York Excelsior.
Yeah, there is a really good monologue in that whole thing, and I couldn't necessarily find it, but she goes through all of the individual scores and the Philly playoff games and everything else that was going on in 2008. But for me, I'll nominate, I was a slut. There was always part of me that is dirty and sloppy, but I like that. Just like all the other parts of myself. I can forgive. Can you say for the same for yourself, fucker? Can you forgive? Are you capable of that?
Okay.
And I just think, and that's kind of part of that whole back and forth discussion where she's really trying to push him to spend time with her by doing the whole dance competition. And, he's reticent to try and get into that. But that it really sets up kind of the stakes moving forward. So.
Yeah.
All right. Honorable mentions. And this one is more just for you than anything else. So I do love Pat Sr.'s little piece right before the ending there. And it's probably De Niro's best monologue of the whole thing, outside of his kind of emotional reveal of his guilt, of kind of his understanding that he passed on his bipolar. But let me tell you, I know you don't want to listen to your father. I didn't listen to mine, and I'm telling you, you got to pay attention this time. When life reaches out at a moment like this, it's a sin if you don't reach back. I'm telling you, it's a sin if you don't reach back. It'll haunt you the rest of your days like a curse. You're facing a big challenge in your life right now at this very moment right here. That girl loves you. She really, really loves you. I don't know if Nikki ever did, but she sure as shit doesn't right now. So don't fuck this up. It just reminded me so much of the times that you've tried to do the same thing, one way or another during the course of my life. It seems like the father's anthem, and I just love the fact that they kind of bring that back around. So, yeah,
it was a great moment.
I mean, it's probably one of the better parts, and I think this is a movie filled with tons of quotes and different stuff, but just, that one did the best for me. So I already gave a couple of my funny line nominees earlier but Raisin Bran and then kind of that first meeting. What did you have? I know you were struggling potentially with this or finding the funny in this movie.
I deal with this every day. I have a hard time finding funny, even in the lines. I just could not find a line that I thought was funny. There's a certain sadness even to the lines that are funny, to me anyway, because I understand
it's very dark humor.
Okay, yeah, I'll give you that, but I just had a very difficult time with it.
All right. Most indelible moment for me, it's the ending. Just, that whole kind of that, even what you called that third part, but either between Jennifer Lawrence's big monologue piece where she's kind of describing how she's his silver lining and why everything positive has been because of her, even through the dance, and then that they're going to win the bet, obviously, but you don't exactly know how it's going to do, and that scene just still works for me. And then finally, I am always going to be a sucker for a great rom-com speech. Whether it's the ending of Harry Met Sally or it's the letter he writes to Tiffany at the end of this. I literally wrote down, I fucking love a good speech.
Okay, I guess.
It's going to be the romantic in me until we're done doing these movies.
All right.
Yeah. So we'll move into the grading. So I'm likely to have graded this probably higher than you. And this is the trick with some of these more recent movies, is we don't have the same hindsight. So this might be eventually up for nominee for a revisit at some point. Probably not immediately, but so for Legacy, I'll just make my kind of argument. This isn't a movie that, other than it's been on Netflix for, I don't know, probably as long as I can remember at this point, is something that a lot of people talk about. It's not part of the consciousness. It's not something that we go back to. Really, its biggest legacy is Bradley Cooper doing more serious artistic work came more after this film. Really, up to this point, he was known for the Hangover franchise and being the bad guy in Wedding Crashers, but kind of kicked off his whole decade of Oscar tries, culminating in his directorial debut in redoing A Star is Born last year. And then we kind of get to Jennifer Lawrence winning her Oscar and everything that's going on with that. So I had it at a 6.5, just because of those things, of kind of how it kickstarted certain pieces of the career. But I don't know where you're sitting at.
5.
So you had a 5?
Yes, I had a 5. Simply because it's, the extent by which they did mental illness was a little you know, unique, but there's not that much that's unique, and I don't see that the tail has been real large.
No, and like frankly, as far as David O. Russell's concerned, I mean, he did a couple of other movies after this with Jennifer Lawrence that got her nominated, but like she hasn't been in serious conversation for winning another award, other than launching kind of their two careers. Like Russell has not really done anything. This is probably his peak film, and outside of it, this isn't a movie that was discussed as part of like the top 10 of anybody or even top 25 of anybody's decade. I mean, I individually love this movie, but I understand where it is. So I guess I'll come down to probably a 5.5 then. Is that acceptable?
Fine.
All right. So what did you have for impact or significance?
5. For the same reasons I indicated previously.
Boy, and I think there's going to be probably a big separation. Now, just notable, I mean, this was nominated for Best Picture, Director, Actor, Adapted Screenplay, Film Editing, Supporting Actor and Actress, and did win for Best Actress. So I did think it's not it's certainly not the first to deal with mental illness. It's not the first to deal with a manic state or any of these other things, but I do think it did have a little bit of furthering maybe the conversation in a way that other movies hadn't, and I do think that, again, you just look on where Bradley Cooper's kind of gone from here. I do think his career kind of taking off does give this an extra layer, at least like a 0.5 point bump. So I don't know if I'm willing to go under a 6 on that.
All right, you convinced me. I'll go 6.
And it's why I also was kind of high on the novelty score, kind of in the same way. And I know that some of these things run together, but kind of making a rom-com about mental illness. I don't know if there are too many other movies that really kind of did anything quite like that.
It was unique. That I will give it. To that extent, I would go 7.5.
All right, I had it at an 8, but 7.5 is probably a good settling number. So now here's the part where, like, this not being so very old, like the only part that didn't age well for me, and again, this is another one where it comes back around, is it had Weinstein at the beginning of the movie. Outside of that, like, I don't think there's any particular part of this. The only other thing is like, it's a positive piece where, like, all this suffering Eagles fans, and now they've actually won a Super Bowl, so they can shut the fuck up for another 50 years. But, yeah, like, I didn't have a problem with anything. So, unfortunately, like, I'm not going to nitpick this piece apart. The classicness for me has got to be a little higher. I can't give it like full marks or anything else, but I had to go at an 8.5. And again, it's just
I had 7.
Okay, explain yourself.
Well, there's certain aspects that it'll hold up. I will say that much, and it's subject matter that is going to continue to be in place in the future. And in fact, as we go through this whole COVID-19 situation, they were talking about the lagging pandemic that's going to happen, which is called mental illness as a result of people being isolated. So, yeah, but I just don't see this as having the legacy. It's not like 20 years from now, people are going to look back and reminisce and go, oh, yeah, Silver Linings Playbook. Yeah, I remember that film.
Well, but I already said that at the top. It's not that it's... See, like, the classicness as far as certain things, I do think that the way they treat mental illness is a little bit more daring, and so it's going to end up holding up a little bit longer than some other ways we've discussed it. But I don't I don't know. Like, the conversation moves so quickly sometimes that it's hard to know how we're going to feel in 2030 by the time we're, on the back stretch of some of these podcast episodes, and how we're currently looking at the same conversation.
Yeah, I guess.
So, and that's why it just based upon that, I don't know where we're going to be at. But what did you have again for Oh, okay, never mind. So I'll give it a 7.5. Now here's the one where you and I are probably going to really diverge. I've watched this movie probably a dozen times at this point. It's an 8-year-old movie. I think this is what, your second viewing?
Yes.
So I gave it an 8, but just quickly give me yours. And I think we're just going to have to split the difference. I know you don't react to this movie in the same way that I do.
Well, like I said, I had a hard time. I was trying to judge it outside of my emotional reaction, so I gave it a 6.5.
Okay.
So
I think I can bring it up to a 7 then.
I'd go 7.5 because even then, my guttural feeling on this is probably wrong.
Well, I don't know. I want to respect that. Your opinion is what it is, and you can't really.
It's tied to my emotions, and it's probably not a rational thought.
Okay, but this gets back to the conversation that you ask me what I think about a film most of the time, and whether or not I think it's of best picture quality. And I'm telling you, every time that we've had this discussion, every single calendar year, it's always the same thing. It's whether or not walking out of the theater, I had a certain gut reaction that was a really good film, that it translated to me emotionally, that I could get past all of the other pieces, right, because you want an emotional reaction from something that's artistic. And separating out the emotion is not something that I think is warranted or necessary. I understand your appeal of trying to do this, and part of this podcast is to separate, out or give us a more rational way of figuring out what the greatest movie is. But even so, you and I are basing it on our subjective notes of how we feel about these things, even in those categories, in order to figure that out.
All right. Well, okay.
So anyway, so that puts us, add in the 8.6 for the audience score. It only received 86%. The critics were a little higher on this one. They had a 92 overall on Rotten Tomatoes. Comes out for a 42.6 overall score. And I think that places this kind of in our bottom tier as our 11th episode of ones that we've viewed so far. Let me just bring up the overall list. And right now, that would put it just above Rocky and Inglourious Bastards, I believe.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's not one I would have necessarily predicted. And again, as time goes by, we may feel differently about this, which is why I think, once a quarter we'll try and look at, some of the other ones we've done to see kind of how those have played out, if we need to revisit any. But that's where I think it's sitting at the moment. So any other last thoughts?
No, I don't. I mean, I probably should watch it again a third time that's more recent so that the initial shock value of it isn't quite where it was. But, I just, I don't know. I don't know how to quite express it. I've been racking my brain trying to think of how to express exactly how I feel about the film. I know it's a good film, and it's probably extremely well done and well acted, but I just have a hard time with the subject matter, I guess.
Well, and why does it kind of put you in that category, or why
having to deal with people in this situation, and having in my career having to watch families break up and marriages dissolve, and I don't find any of this to be anything that I find enjoyable. And when I go to a film, I want to have a moment of just enjoyment, something beyond my own reality. And so when I have to experience stuff that I find repulsive, it just makes me cringe a bit.
I guess I can understand that. I mean, the way you react to certain films is always going to be your reaction overall. And like I just said, you don't want to necessarily set out the emotion. Some things are going to be harder to watch than others. And like I know there are some films on here that are going to be much more of testing for us than others. But that's where we're going to just end up. That's why we watch these movies to begin with. So. All right, so just projecting ahead to next week, we've got Slumdog Millionaire coming up next week. It's still currently on HBO for anybody that wants to watch along with us. We expect to be back and be able to post that hopefully next week. If not, we do have a couple of bonus episodes that might be upcoming here in the near future. I do want to clear up, this is our 11th actual episode, but this is only the 9th film we've reviewed so far, at least for podcast episodes. Like I said, we have a couple in reserve just as backup. But the week after Slumdog Millionaire is one of your favorites that I know you're going to look forward to. Groundhog Day, currently on Netflix.
Extremely underrated film. Extremely underrated film.
Well, and I think that's going to be a great conversation between the two of us for the legacy of kind of how that one goes about. So, but otherwise, we've been trying out some new formats in the last couple of weeks. If anybody has any feedback they'd like to give us, we'd be happy to hear it. You can email the podcast or email me at tj3.duncan@gmail.com. You can find me at Twitter at tj3duncan. You can visit the website that's going to be in the show notes, but is tj3duncan.wixsite.com. That I keep a running list and all of the articles that go along with the podcast. We are looking to also have a couple of co-hosts or guest hosts for some specialty episodes upcoming. And we're also starting to look ahead to kind of our 25th celebratory episode. We're going to hopefully do some of the best and biggest films on kind of those big milestone marker episodes each year. So 25 and 50 are going to be the big ones for this year. We've got some things planned for you guys. So hopefully we'll see you next week, and have a great week, everybody.
I do wish we could chat longer, but I'm having an old friend for dinner. After all, tomorrow is another day. As always, please subscribe, rate, and comment on the show from wherever you get your podcasts. It will help everyone else find the show and share in the fun. If you would like to suggest a movie we should review or potentially guest star on one of the episodes, please follow either Dana or I on Twitter at TJ3Duncan or at Dana W. Duncan.